Hi everyone, this is figured bass lesson number 2, and in this short video we're going to look at a figured bass by Georg Friedrich Händel, and this is a bass line that he wrote for a student of his to practice chords, 5/3 chords, meaning chords that do not have any figures. So essentially, again, we have a bass line here, and all we're going to do is add the third and the fifth and probably the octave to each of these notes in the bass line. So the first thing to do is just to play the bass line and sort of get it in your ear. This is the important part of the musicianship aspect of what figured bass is good for. So let's play it. Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you really want to get the most benefit, you might want to sing the bass line, solfege, use solfege. Do, sol, mi, la, fa, do, la, fa, sol, la, fa, sol, do. So we're going to start with stage 1, just like we did with the previous figured bass, and we're just going to play the first level of what we're going to do is very simple. We're just going to play a third above the bass line, and this time I'm going to play it as a 10th, which is a third an octave higher. So we're going to start C, we're going to add E, and we're just going to play them with a third above. So try and see if you can do this with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's try it again. 2, 3, 4. Let's try add the third and the fifth now. 1, 2, a little slower. 3 and 4 and. Now we're going to play a full 5/3 chord in the right hand with the bass. And again, there are a lot of parallels, essentially parallel fifths between every two chords here. So this is not our final goal, but this is really in the goal of making sure that you know the pitches that you need to play immediately when you see a figured bass line. You do not want to memorize the voice leading. What you want to do is you want to know the chords so easily and quickly that you can focus on voice leading as opposed to trying to figure out what chord you're trying to play. 3, 4. So now we're going to try to take this bass line and move it to stage 2. If you remember stage 2, we have all the chords correctly, as we just did. All the pitches are there. But we try to use the closest motion possible between every two chords. We may have parallels, but we will have all the common tones stay in place. If you remember, when the bass moves by a fifth or a fourth, we'll have one common tone. When the bass moves by a third, we will have two common tones. So let's look at that. And I'm going to start with the hands quite far from each other, just because this bass line tends to start by going up quite a bit. So I don't want my hands to overlap here. So I'm going to have the chord here and the bass here. In keyboard style, there's no problem with that. So from C to G, it's a fifth. We'll have one note in common. That note is G. From G to E, it's a third. We'll have two notes in common, both the B and the G. From E to A, we will have one note in common. That note will be E. From A to F, we'll have two notes in common. Those notes, it's a third. Two notes in common. Those notes are C and A. From F to C, it's a fifth. Once again, one note in common. That note would be C. And then a third, we have two notes in common, C and E. A to F, two notes in common, it's a third. And then from F to G, no notes in common. In stage 3, we'll do something about it. Here, we're just going to have parallels everywhere. Once again, from G to A, just parallels everywhere. From A to F, we have two notes in common, it's a third. And then from F to G, parallels again. And back to C, one note in common. Okay, I got pretty far off between the hands, so probably I started too high. So let's do this once again. And if this is taking you a long time or this is challenging for you, stop the video and go chord by chord and make sure you know how to move between each chord. Like, I'm sure you have the notes down now, the pitches down now. Now you have to figure out between two chords what notes are in common and where the other voices will move. So let's start down here now. So from C to G, we have one note in common. It'll be G. So the other voices just move in the closest possible motion. And then from G to E, we'll have two notes in common because it's third. From G to A, we will have one note in common because it's a fourth. It'll be the E. The other voices will move the shortest possible route. From A to F, once again, two notes in common. And from F to C, it's a fifth, one note in common. The other voices will move down. Now my hands are together. We're doubling the tenor and bass here, the C. A third, we'll have two notes in common. A third, we'll have two notes in common, another two notes in common. Here we're going to have just parallels everywhere. It's just stage 2. Yes, all the voices are moving up because it's the closest possible route. Same thing from G to A. And from A to F, we have two notes in common. From F to G, no notes in common, parallels everywhere. Then the G stays, and we have the C chord. Okay, so please do not move on to stage 3 until you got this stage mastered, like really, really down well, so you can play it without hesitation and in tempo. So I'm going to do it one more time without any explanations, just in tempo. If you can't play along with me, either rewind the video to the beginning of stage 2, or just stop the video and practice this until this is possible for you. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you can do that, please go on to stage 3. If you can't do that yet, practice it until you get it right. It shouldn't take that long to get this. So stage 3, we want to have all the pitches correct, as in stage 1. We want to have all the voices moving in the shortest possible motion, as in stage 2, unless there are parallels, parallel fifths and parallel octaves, and then we want to use contrary motion to avoid that. And again, with series of 5/3 chords, this will happen when you have a motion by second in the bass. So here if you look, we have it here between F and G, between G and A, and then between F and G again here. So again, there's no trick to it. It's very simple. All you have to do is use contrary motion. So I'd like to start with a third in the soprano now. Again, I just think that will give us the best musical motion here. You can try different options with a fifth, like we did before, with a unison or an octave. Let's try and do it with a third right now. So first chord C, it's fine. Then we move to G. Nothing is different between stage 2 and stage 3. Moving to E, same thing, just like stage 2. Then moving to A, we have one common tone, same thing. Moving to F, we have two common tones, those are A and C. And then back to C, once again, there's one common tone. This is all the same as it was in stage 2. And then moving to A, we have two common tones, same thing as in stage 2. Moving to F, two common tones, because it's a third. And now we got to the F right here, and we want to move to G. Now, if we just do what we did in stage 2, the closest motion would end up with parallel fifths and octaves. So what you want to do is you want to use contrary motion between the top 3 voices and the bottom voice. So I'm moving from this F chord to a G chord. You see that the top 3 voices just moved by descending motion. Again, we want to move from G to A. It's a second in the bass, 2, 5, 3 chords. So if we just use the shortest possible route, we would end up with parallel octaves and fifths. So again, what you want to do is just use contrary motion between the bass and the top voices. And then from A to F, we don't have these problems again because it's just a third. So we have 2 common tones. We move to this F chord, we're fine. And then back to G, we have the same issue. It's a second in the bass. So we use contrary motion between the top 3 voices and the bass. The G's common tone, moving to a C chord. And voila, we're done with this exercise. So let's play it once. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is perfectly fine realization of this bass. I feel like we could make it a little bit better if we actually moved higher up here between the C and I think between the C and the A chord. See, like having a perfectly fine figured bass doesn't mean that it's the most beautiful, most musical one. We can always try to improve it. Sorry, I'll start with a soprano. It's soprano in a third position. Maybe here. Maybe that's a better melodic line. So you can experiment with that. So let's now, again, once we have everything set on the keyboard, we can write it out. Again, we started with third. I think here, if we went up to a higher soprano, it's more musical. We didn't have to do that. So this is one realization of this bass. This is a great exercise. If you have this exercise under your belt and not memorizing one realization like this one, so you can actually say it and play it from a different soprano. So what you really want to do is not write it out and just start realizing this bass many times with different sopranos positioned. 1 in the soprano, 3 in the soprano, 5 in the soprano. Change the melody in the middle. Try to add, you know, if you can, arpeggiate some of the chords. Maybe if you know what passing tones are, you can try to add those. Just get this really solid in your fingers, because this is such a great exercise that if you know it, really any 5/3 chord progression will be pretty easy for you. So that's figured bass lesson number 2.